such a beautiful dream.
Welcome to Suspension History. Let's talk about AccuAir. Hey guys, before we get this video started, I have some very, very important and difficult news to tell you. Subscribe to our channel, please. That's all I wanted to tell you. Okay, let's get on with the video. So because YouTube loves talking about air suspension, we're here to bring you the Batman v Superman, the vegans versus me. We're here to bring you the up and coming, the very new, the very controversial to some people, AccuAir Suspension.
Hell fucking yeah!
AccuAir Suspension was founded in 2001 by two brothers, Dustin and Reno Heon. Now these two brothers have been involved in the car community since they were children. In fact, they grew up surrounded by hot rods, surrounded by car shows, surrounded by everything that you would probably want to be involved in if your favorite toy was a Hot Wheel. These two brothers were actually building a product for themselves for the grassroots event that they had locally. They decided they wanted to take a chopped up Blazer and bring it to the show. And of course, if you're gonna bring any chopped up Blazer, what's the number one modification that you wanna do? Air suspension. Pretty simple, right? You just install the air suspension. Back in the day, 2001 is actually not too long ago, or at least I like to think it's not. And it was just, that was it. Except the brothers couldn't figure out a way to essentially manage this air suspension system accurately for their specific application. These guys decided to do something a little different. They designed their own management system using computer software and height pressure monitoring systems to create their first ever E-level system for their own Blazer. And it worked pretty good. And at the time, the two brothers wanted to create a system that was easier to use. Now there was systems already out there at the time in 2001, and there have been systems in the past decades or so, but they weren't really that easy or reliable to use, especially when it came down to a vehicle that you wanted to drive every single day. So these guys decided, why not try to introduce a computer-based system that actually used height sensors to determine if you could have the amount of pressure needed in an airbag so that you could just drive it wherever you wanted. And it was pretty much unheard of at the time. And so when they finally decided to develop the product, it worked great and people wanted it. I mean, these guys were just creating this product because it was for their specific use. They wanted to have something that was gonna work for their Blazer. They didn't wanna just make a product that they would sell, but it was clear that a lot of people, especially at these events, wanted their setup. And besides, what else are you gonna do when you're 21 or 17 years old? Get a girlfriend? Buy a house? Go to college? Marty, did you go to college? Yeah, that's what I thought. And from there, they decided to debut further projects of what they used for their system at a bunch of other events throughout the area. And it worked. These guys were actually getting quite a bit of traction, and the crowd wasn't the young crowd. See, at the time, they were going to classic car shows. These were shows where there were hot rods, where they were laying frame, where it wasn't really necessarily about airing out in a parking lot in a 2001 B5 S4, but we're talking about the 66s and the 70s and the Chevelles that wanted these guys as project. And it worked amazing, especially considering the amount of tech that was going behind it. But it was clear that AccuAir was gonna have a lot of challenges, considering that a lot of people could buy the same exact product for a lot less. When they started in 2001, from the first 6 years of operation, they only sold 1,000 management systems on vehicles. Now that sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about a management system that could go on tens, if not hundreds of thousands of vehicles, really wasn't a whole lot. AccuAir was a more expensive option and continues to be a more expensive option, but when you're a new business, it's probably one of the hardest things that you can do, especially when you're a consumer. You just go buy whatever's affordable. Especially at the time, not a lot of people were willing to spend more money on a project or program that they didn't even know worked, or how it worked, or even why they would need it. Over the course of the next few years, it became apparent that there was a lot more that AccuAir could provide for consumers than just a management system that worked. They found out that this was something that was way more versatile than anything else that was existing on the market. And that's what makes AccuAir so special. So AccuAir uses a height sensor system instead of a pressure-based system like other competitive air suspension companies use. So what does that mean? That means that it's not just based on a preload set of pressure that's set into a system that you can then set it to on your module or your management. The pressure system is pretty fundamental like that. You get presets and things like that. The height system is much different. It actually adjusts to whatever the workload of the vehicle is, or just the overall weight, depending on which system you bought. Now at the time, it was pretty much fundamental, where it just used what it could and it adjusted at startup. And now current AccuAir systems are way fancier than that, but at the time, It worked out great because a lot of people found out that they could use AccuAir systems to daily drive their vehicles, and they didn't have to worry about trying to figure out what pressure pounds you needed to have in bags, or whether you were gonna toss more things in the back of your car that would pretty much make it scrape. That's what made it so freaking cool, was the fact that AccuAir was smart enough to figure out the difference between what you actually needed and what the vehicle needed, and you just didn't have to worry about really anybody making any mistakes. AccuAir took the stupid out of having air suspension in your car because it literally made it impossible to make mistakes. And then this is where AccuAir really started to take off. They had a solid product, they were growing, but they realized that they needed to make something better. So the brothers decided to get together and figure out a new system. You might have heard of it. It was called E-Level. So E-Level was a system that allowed you to install it with bags and all that sort of good stuff, and it would actually learn about your vehicle in like 5 minutes or less. And it would adjust everything accordingly where you didn't have to do anything. And this is what essentially put AccuAir on the board. Now you have to remember, in terms of other competitive companies like Airlift that have been around since the dawn of time, AccuAir pretty much had to get a jump start to be even remotely competitive with these companies. And at the time they weren't. But once they came out with the E-Level system, and once they actually showed what they were capable of doing, people caught on, and people caught on really quick. From there, the Heon brothers knew that they had something, but they needed to market it further. Now there's obviously consumer purposes, and then there's commercial purposes, and they decided to go after whatever they possibly could. So ambulances, buses, shuttles, everything like that, they started to go with to try and see if they would sell or buy their AccuAir systems, and it worked. This allowed them to get more money into the company so that the Heon brothers could develop things further, make things nicer, and of course, develop new products. Now, going back to the brothers is very important because this company is essentially built on a hashtag, zero compromise. The zero compromise is a cheesy yet pretty cool slogan because of just how these two were raised. These guys were built to be perfectionists. They were engineers by trade, not businessmen. These are the guys that actually go to the CAD design and make it themselves. These are the guys that bring everything in-house and develop it and test it before they ship it out to their customer. These guys weren't looking to make a buck. They were looking to make the perfect product, and they consistently tried to do that. Now, obviously, when we get into the scheme of things, you need to be affordable, but for AccuAir, it was never about that. It was just about making a product with zero compromises. And that's why E-Level continued to grow and get better, because they knew that they had to develop a product that was better than everything else out there with absolutely zero shortcuts. From there, AccuAir began to grow. From the first two moves, they had nearly 50 staffed employees, and AccuAir was at anything but a standstill. In 2012, they decided to move into San Luis, which had a 26,000 square foot warehouse, and it lasted about 6 seconds. It was clear that they moved into the wrong location, because over the next 4 years, they then took that 26,000 square foot building and were like, nah, we need more, and ended up moving into a 70,000 square foot building, which had a ton more space. And this is where they still continue to exist to this day. But they continue to grow, and they'll probably move out, just like I did when I was 18. Hi, Dad. So for any of you guys out there that own a business, run a business, went to school for business, or have management classes, you probably know what I'm about to talk about. There is a theory called dying by success, in which case a company grows too fast and then you end up struggling, suffocating, and dying. And that's probably a really gruesome way to think about it. But during those moves that AccuAir was doing, they actually were right on the verge of that. AccuAir was growing at a pace that they honestly couldn't keep up with. The brothers were not businessmen. They were engineers. They were technicians. These were guys that wanted to create a product. They did not know how to run a multi-million-dollar company. And that's where things started to get a little scary for AccuAir. In fact, there are pieces out there in which case they knew that a lot of their services and qualities needed to be improved just because they didn't have anything set in place. In 2014, they ended up having to jump on board with an actual external management company called Collaborative, which actually helped them get them back on board. But they survived. In 2015, they recorded they were on the top 5,000 and had a 235% growth within the business. The year prior, they had 7.1 million in sales in 2014. The brothers got through the phase, and that's probably one of the most difficult phases for any company, and as anyone in the car community can say, they're probably glad that they did. AccuAir made some great products, and they updated pretty much everything they possibly could when it came down to design, quality assurance, customer service, product design, shipping, and everything in between. And on top of that, AccuAir is making a ton of new products. They have compressors that are inside their actual endo tanks. They have newly designed, almost completely no noise compressors and line lines running almost all the time in cars. They have nitrogen filled tanks that do all sorts of fancy stuff. They have a bunch of new products that are coming out. Their quality is amazing. So everything is looking good for AccuAir. So why wouldn't you choose AccuAir? And it's probably the same reason that you wouldn't choose 3-piece BBS wheels, because it's so goddamn expensive. So this is where a lot of people combine airlift versus AccuAir and which one is better. And we're not gonna be the drama kids on the playground and tell you which one to go with. It's completely personal preference. Both have their pros and cons. In fact, pressure-based systems and height-based systems also have their pros and cons. It all depends on what you want and what you're willing to pay. Now, in a perfect world, I'd probably be running around in a brand new R8 on some 3-piece, on some air and this and that, and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I have a house mortgage to pay. So it's unlikely that I'm gonna do that. And a lot of other people face similar budget constraints when they're trying to build their car. It's only normal. So if you're looking for something that's going to be really breaking the bank, AccuAir has no problem doing that for you, and they do deliver a great product. Their zero compromise is pretty much relevant in everything that they do, whether it comes down to their own building being pretty much immaculate, to their designs being almost perfectly made, to their reliability and customer service is amazing. So that is everything that we have on AccuAir Suspension. We hope you guys enjoyed. We want to know what you guys want to see next. Drop it in the comments. Mario reads and replies to every single comment. He flicked me off last time. This time he's just staring at me with a Mountain Dew in his hand. He just had a Red Bull too. This man's gonna die by the time he's like 30. You'd be surprised that he's just still not fat yet. But that's besides the point. Let us know in the comments. We'll shoot you a reply and we'll hopefully film it next week. But I'm Alex from Fitment Industries. Check out our website if you're looking to pick up wheels, tires, suspension, airlift, any sort of stuff that we have. We have t-shirts. Anyway, I'm Alex from Fitment Industries. We will see you later. Peace.